so here's what's going on. Lexi is there. Say hi, Lexi.
Hello.
Okay, so you can't see her and you don't need to see her because I have to upload this and she doesn't like when people see her. Basically, what I've done is I've taken all of these books, okay, plus some studies, plus some videos that I thought were really beneficial, and I turned them into this little PowerPoint. It's so exciting. Are you excited, Alexis?
I'm excited.
That's great. Do you know anything about teaching kids mathematics?
Nope.
Okay. Do you know anything about reading?
Nope.
So today what we're talking about is read the title because it's backwards and I actually can't read it. So go ahead.
Methods to improve comprehension.
Yep. And
Okay.
vocabulary development in a mathematics. It's not supposed to say annotated bibliography. Ignore that. I just copy and paste. Why I'm doing this, Alexis? The reason I am doing this is because, as you may know, I did a lot of crying in high school. And in fact, I did a lot of crying in middle school as well because I was really, really bad at math. It also turns out that part of the reason I was bad at like physics is because I can't read. So like I couldn't read those labs and understand what Mr. H wanted us to do. Part of the reason I'm doing this is because the fact that I didn't know how to like parse apart information led to me struggling with math. Also, I'm a math interventionist, I'm a math person, and I just love teaching kids math. Would you agree with those things?
I would agree.
Okay, let's talk child development, because here's the thing. You can't teach kids if you don't know what their brains and bodies are doing. It doesn't work that way. Piaget's cognitive development, which you're familiar with this, correct?
Oh, yes.
Yes, you're familiar with the sensory motor phase, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Which is like what? Do you remember? Like it's like babies sticking things in their mouth and like
exploring different textures.
Yep, and they like take things and they go like because they're trying to understand the world around them. So that's like the first stage. The next one is pre-operational, I think. Anyways, this is the stage where they start to like symbolically understand the world, but they don't actually understand the world. It's like what we're really concerned with today is concrete operational and formal operational, because here's the deal. Concrete operational is important because that is the stage where kids learn through seeing stuff, okay? So they make these connections. So you can teach them something and show them something and they can put the two together. What you cannot do at this stage though is tell them something without showing them something and expecting them to understand what this is. While at the formal operational stage, now we're into abstract thinking. Now we're into planning. Now we're into strategizing, okay? And this matters because here's the deal. If you're teaching first grade and you look at a first grader and you go, hey, what's 3 + 5? Well, guess what? There's a really good chance that they don't have the type of thinking that they need yet, which is that concrete/abstract thinking to solve that problem. They just can't do it. Let's talk more about how this development occurs in like middle schoolers, because again, I teach 6th grade. Ignore the sound of cars in the background. It's a beautiful day out. So I teach 6th grade, and because I teach 6th grade, I'm very interested in how their brains work, because if you don't get why 6th graders do what they do, it's very frustrating and very, makes you sad. I don't really have the word for it, but anyways, part of the reason that middle schoolers are so difficult to work with at times is because their prefrontal cortex is myelinating, which means that their little neurons are getting that nice fatty white stuff all over their tubes, okay? This is not happening overnight. This is continually happening with the neurons that they are using the most. Now, along with that, because they are also going through that formal operational phase, they're struggling to make good choices. They're going to make bad decisions in your classroom, and they're going to make you crazy, because that's what this stage is about. It's about the fact that their decision-making part of their brain, their executive functioning part of their brain is on fire, and we need to respect that. Language development. Now, we don't really need to parse through the phonological development, the semantic development, the grammar development, and pragmatic development separately. What I really want to hit on, and what I did hit on in my paper with language development, kids miss stages of language development. They don't get language. It's hard. COVID, we have a lot of babies coming to school that missed out on a year of learning during these important language development times, and also during their important like cognitive development times. It has to be considered when we're giving instruction that a lot of our kids don't have the ability to have prior knowledge activated, and we need to be considerate of that as these kids move through their school and meet them where they are. You ever heard of orthographic and phonological mapping, Alexis?
No.
No one has. No one has ever heard of this, but it's like the most important thing for teaching kids how to learn, basically, like how to read, how to write, how to spell. So orthographic mapping orthographic mapping. Do you see how I just did this? A loop? It's a loop. Say the word like octopus, okay? So I said it, so you heard it. Now you need to say the word octopus.
Okay, octopus.
Now you heard yourself say it. Now what would make this even better is if I was holding up a piece of paper and had octopus spelled out. That way your brain can connect the letters to the sound in the word. That is what orthographic mapping is.
Is it learning things by doing it 3 different ways?
It's using 3 different senses. Brain has to take in information and then shove it back out. Increases your ability to retain that information. So with phonological mapping, this is what I really like to do with my kids. Have them read it, write it, say it. I think I just flipped those 2. We might have to redo this part, but that's okay.
Read it, write it, say it, yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure I do have this right though. There's no notes on this, so maybe it's fine.
That's true, because I remember learning that.
Yep.
Read it, write it, say it.
So phonological development or mapping, and I hope I got this right. It's fine, I'll fix it if it is. So this is what I do with my kids. So I will say, I can add and subtract from 10. You're gonna go, I can add and subtract from 10. And then I'm gonna have my little thing on the board and you're gonna write down exactly, I can add and subtract from 10. You're reading it and then you're writing it down. Really so unbelievably well for kids with phonological processing disorders, for just processing disorders, for dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia. These are the things that you need to meet them at so that they can succeed. We have all these methods and I picked these methods, Lexi, use them, but they're based in science. They're not just like, oh, I did this once and like it worked and I liked it. They're actually based in like methods we like. Is explicit, direct instruction. There's a very specific framework for it and it follows what kids need in order to retain information. So I selected that one because it really meets the needs of kids at all grade levels, at all ages. It's straight to the point. It relies on chunking. I love tappling, and a lot of people don't because they consider it the same as like cold calling. So like back in the day when Mrs. Shaver did this to us, hey Alexis, what's like 17 times 4? It just like cold called you. A lot of people think that's what tappling is. That's not what it is at all. It does not work actually. It just inspires fear, but it's okay. You're going to ask a question. You're going to give the kids a chance to talk to each other. They're going to turn to each other and they're going to discuss, hey, this is what I think the answer is and why. One kid doesn't know and the other kid doesn't know, then they can go to another group of kids and be like, what do you think is engaging and critical thinking, but they are also relying on each other for support, which is very collaborative. And those are skills that we strive for at all grade levels. And then you pull the stick and you say, oop, it's Roger's turn, and Roger tells you what the answer is to the best of his ability. It's not necessarily that they have to get it right, it's just that you want them to be thinking. Next we have Tier 2 and Tier 3 vocabulary words. This is something new I learned during, know what I'm talking about first off at all. No one does, because no one doesn't. Why would you? There's different levels of words, okay, in vocabulary. Tier 1 is like your cat, bat, hat, sat. My mom is pretty. Like words you hear every day. They're not hard for kids to pull up, had consistent exposure to these words. Tier 2 words are words that they've had less exposure to. So this would be like the word sophisticated or like the word courageous. They may hear it, but it's not something they hear every day. Tier 3 words are words that are just content specific, like you're not going to know them, like scapular, infrastructure, spina, like you do all the time, like that. Those are Tier 3 words that are not common in everyday conversation at all, and you likely would not hear unless you're in the same field as that person. This matters for vocab development in children because we're picking vocab lists. If you load it down with Tier 3 words, you're setting your kids up for failure. If you're setting them up to memorize a bunch of content specific words that they've never utilized before, never used in a situation, and never applied, yeah, they're gonna fail their vocab test. 2 words more so than Tier 3 because you want them to have exposure to words that aren't common but that they're gonna hear. So you want to put words like sophisticated, confidence, courageous, so words that are more academic onto these vocab tests to set your kids up for an actual meaningful learning experience. Parroting is the #1 thing I do in my classroom. Anyone who's watched me teach has watched me parrot, and it's really fun because the kids hate it, and honestly it fills my cup that they hate it, but it really does work. Something like the distributive property is, and I'll give the definition, and then they again have to recite it back to me, and it relies on that phonological loop. Integration of content This is like a really great thing to do at any grade level, but it's really meaningful with those middle level kids, because for the first time ever, you're listening to them and saying, hey, what do you want to learn more about? So they can do this through activism. So if there's something going on in their community that they do not align with, they have a chance to talk about it for the first time ever. But the fact is that they need to bring you statistics. They need to bring you the ability to read a graph. They have to be able to read research. These are all skills that we do in multiple content areas. And by providing this project for them, they get to put it all together. Ways is that you can start reading to them about stories that involve the math you're using. So like when I was doing second grade, we used to talk about like circumference and the blah blah blah, and it was a story about a knight, but it was all about circles because our kids were learning their shape in geometry, and it was just kind of funny. The integration is really wonderful. Okay, and that's the end of it. Okay, bye-bye. The real function was to make sure that anyone who's going to read it understood that the focus needs to be on the development of the student and who the student is and where they are. Not necessarily on, I want them to know their math facts. We want to teach them their math facts in a way that works for them successfully. I presented in my paper, maybe not this presentation super well. I just want to go over the main points, but they're main points that I really think are important. Okay, bye-bye.